All right, everybody. Thank you, Ali, for being here. It's such an honor to have you. Everyone, welcome to the Latter-day Lobster podcast. Um, this is going to be an exciting episode. Ali, just to introduce her a little bit, she presented at our last lobster conference, and she killed it. It was awesome. She runs a blog called The Philosophy of Motherhood. It's been retweeted twice now by Dr. Jordan Peterson, so that's very exciting. You have a lot of clout, I hear, with some people connected to Dr. Peterson.
I don't know.
um, Maybe you can tell us about that later in the
Yeah, I
podcast.
wouldn't say clout. I'm nobody special, but I was very shocked when he retweeted me a couple times. That's for
I
sure.
think you're a handful of Latter-day Saints that he's retweeted. I know he's retweeted you and Dr. I don't know if he's a doctor, but Professor Ralph Hancock. Dr. Daniel Peterson has been retweeted by him. So that's really cool that you're kind of like in that
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
Um, So I was reading a bit of your blog today, and like you said, it was about motherhood, the philosophy of motherhood, and I read some of the articles you sent me, and I had read them before because I follow your blog. I mean, I'm not the most loyal follower, but I always read it every now and then. Um, but one of the things that you did mention in your blog was, well, first of all, it's an inspiring blog. Like I reread the first entry post that you put, and um, I did find myself like it kind of tugged at my heartstrings because I think you sort of describe kind of what everyone's thinking when it comes to motherhood, like the idea that it's gonna be like a burden and you're gonna like you know have vomit on your sweater and have a messy hair and be on the couch and like can't have the you won't have the energy to get out, but you really make a good job of like explaining why it's important. But anyway, one of the things that you pointed out in your blog was that you had, and you pointed this out at Lobster Conference too, that you had published some research, I think, or an article or two or something, and that you had some interesting prospects in the UK. So tell us about um, your background, like at university and like education and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So I went to BYU for my undergrad, and I worked as a research assistant for several professors, and then I did I taught English in China my first one. I think I was barely 18 when I did that. And then the next summer I went to Tanzania and did a field study and did some research. And then the next summer I went to Uganda and did a volunteer program. And then I went on an 18-month mission to South Africa. And then after I got back, I did a research project with a social work professor, Dr. Roby, and the research we did in South Africa was published by the Journal of Social Work, I think is the name of it. It's been a while, but and so that was cool. And so I really like research. I really love traveling, and I love experience. I love Africa, absolutely. I love Africa. I got my minor in African studies. So then, try and make this short, but um, what happened is on my internship, well, my research project in South Africa, I got to know my husband, um, and we actually started dating and got engaged. And at that time, I had been admitted to Cambridge and Oxford for grad programs, two at Oxford and one at Cambridge. And
I'm so jealous. Just to let you know.
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
um,
impressive. That's like Charles Darwin went to Cambridge and
well,
all these
actually,
big
so
people.
I have a brother who went to Oxford and a brother who went to Cambridge. And my brother who went to Cambridge got his PhD from St. Andrews. So it's kind of, it was part of the family. I lived in Cambridge when I was in high school, and we just fell in love with it there. And I really, my brothers inspired me to try. And so, but it's also very expensive. And, as a woman, it is a little bit different because, okay, I'm going to go into $70,000 worth of debt. And it was just hard because I got engaged to my husband, and we just had a long conversation about it. And I was a finalist for what's called the Gates Scholarship. And so I went out for the interview in Annapolis. And if I had gotten that, it would have been free. And so I was like praying this would work out. But I didn't end up getting it. And so then we just had a really tough decision about what to do, because my husband was going to have to he had gone to university in South Africa, but he was going to have to restart. And we were going to go to BYU or BYU Hawaii. We ended up going to Hawaii, but so, and we just, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to decide. But really in the end, it was a financial decision that I couldn't go to Cambridge. Cambridge is the one I kind of settled on doing. And so it was hard for the first few years of my having babies and stuff, because I kind of just felt like I kept seeing what I could have done. And especially since my brothers went there and they just like loved it so much. And so they were always like, I can't believe you could have gone to Cambridge. Like, they're like, and I really did feel like, and Anthony knows, right? Like when you're in the trenches of raising little babies, there's not a lot of like positive reinforcement you're getting. It's a lot of just work, right? And
Yeah.
you see these cute.
No one's there saying, "Hey, great job."
Yeah, right. And you're also not even getting a lot of feedback from your own children, because they're not old enough to talk and to really show you that, reading all these stories is doing any good. And so, I just found myself like kind of a malcontent, like, and my husband went back to grad school at Notre Dame, and I was like, man, I mean, I could have gone. And I think I was getting some of this, like Jordan Peterson talks about, some of this envy a little bit, like, what about me? Like, is that old Allie just dead? Like, were all those things I did and all those passions and interests, are those just gone? And now I'm just changing diapers, and so I think it was hard. Like, I called my sisters a lot about it, and they were supportive of me, but I think I just had to, I think my kids getting older really helped. And just really the thing that saved me is how much I love my children. And I think that, I'm sure Anthony can agree with that, is just, and this is something that's not easily portrayed through writing or movies, is you can portray the hard things, right? You can portray all the work, but you can't portray the love. It just doesn't come through unless you're living it, right? And so it's hard for these young women to be like, hey, guess what? You should just change diapers when you could do this and this and this and get all this praise from the world. Like, yeah, I mean, of course they're going to go with the other one, unless they come from a family. And see, that's what I came from, a family where I saw a lot of love in my family. And so even though I was a very ambitious person, I also knew I want to have kids, like I want that. And so I was willing to give up these ambitions for that, because for me, that was more important. But then when I was in the trenches of it, I was like, wait, did I make the right choice? Like, was this right? But then, as it's gone on, and I've just seen the power of motherhood, and how awesome how much I love my kids, and the bond between me and my husband, and just the joy of family life. And I really just believe that mothers are the ones who shape the world. I really believe that. And it's just one by one. But that's what I love, what Jordan Peterson talks about, is it's one by one. It's all individual. Like these whole, I maybe I could have gone to Africa and worked for an NGO and helped people, but I still don't think that I would have changed the world in the way that I am now, because I really do feel like my kids can be that. And hopefully what I'm doing with my blog, which, also gives me some feeling of fulfillment. And so that's helped too. But sorry, kind of rambling now, but.
No, you're good.
No, that's so awesome. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm really jealous that you got, except, well, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but
Well,
that's so
Alejandro,
cool
I
that you
mean,
get.
there's absolutely nothing stopping you from getting really good grades at BYU and applying for Cambridge or Oxford. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from that.
Yeah, no, it's
So,
definitely I want to look into, because when I was at Utah Valley University, they offered a study abroad where you could go to Cambridge for a summer. And I'm like, I think that's as close as I'm gonna get. And I was getting ready to do that, but then COVID happened, and so they had to cut the program. And I was like, oh my
oh,
gosh. I'm like, it's okay. Like, I don't have to go to Cambridge. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely something worth aiming for, because even if I don't go there, like, I'll land somewhere nearby. So,
yeah. And I think a
but
lot of people are intimidated because Cambridge and Oxford are also obviously really famous and amazing. But I think I actually think it's harder to get into Harvard. Like it would be harder to get into Harvard than Cambridge or Oxford because not a lot of Americans even try. But I mean, I don't know how it is
Valid.
now, but
Mhm.
I would, I wouldn't knock it until you might try. Like you'd be surprised. So
For sure, yeah. No, thank you for the encouragement. I think I'm gonna really try hard. I'll have to talk to you afterwards about like what I'm doing
yeah.
here at BYU, but I'm really excited. So what was interesting about your blog is your blog isn't just, I mean, it's about motherhood. And I think that's really special, especially like with I hate to say that it's um, a political topic now, but feminism definitely is part of the political discourse right now, and it affects people's choices. But anyways, that aside, one of the things that I don't even remember. I think I met you in the Lobster group primarily, and then your blog. No, no, no. Actually, I heard about you because Jordan Peterson tweeted you out first, and then I don't know how we connected. No, wait. It doesn't matter. The point is, um, the unique thing about your blog too is that it's a blog that also has a lot that features a lot of Jordan Peterson's work, and that was
Mhm.
really interesting. That's why he retweeted you, at least in part.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, since we're in the Latter Day Lobsters here, like we all love anything Jordan Peterson. So
Mhm.
I know your blog is popular, especially among those in that group and among others. But why Jordan Peterson? Like you could. I mean, motherhood encompasses so many things. Um,
Yeah.
why did you stake your ground with Dr. Jordan Peterson?
Well, I just like, whenever he started getting popular, like I like to think I was one of the early adopters, but I don't know how early I was. I just started listening to hours and hours and hours of him. And I really just connected with what he was saying. And I felt like, oh, he's not really talking that much specifically about motherhood. But I just kept making connections in my mind, like, oh, this would apply to this in my everyday life. And my husband was always like, you should start a blog. You should, and I'm like, well, like no one would read. And then I was actually reading a book by Andrew Clavin, which I highly suggest, called The Great Good Thing. And it talks about he's Jewish, but he converted to Christianity. But it just talked about how his writing and how he just feels like that's God's gift for him, and he felt inspired to start. And so I just said, why not just try it? And also Jordan Peterson's like, just do it badly kind of idea, just do things badly. And so I thought, you know what? There's not a lot of women listening to Jordan Peterson. So I'm going to try and make this accessible to women because a lot of mothers don't have a lot of time and also might not be as intellectually interested as some men. I mean, I just have found that. But once you introduce them to these ideas, then I think they really enjoy it. And so that was and I'm just kind of concerned when I see so many young women not even taking a second look at motherhood because they just see the downsides. And I really liked how Jordan Peterson highlighted that and said, hey, like, don't put your career first. Like, what's a job, it can be fulfilling, but we need to rethink if that comes first. And so my first 10 or so really focused on Jordan Peterson, and now I do like other philosophers, C.S. Lewis, other theologians. So I've kind of incorporated more authors and thinkers now. But
That's way awesome. Yeah. Um, it is kind of interesting that people, I guess they tend to criticize Dr. Peterson a lot about like, why aren't there any women coming to your lectures? And he's like, I'm a psychology professor. Like the whole department is women.
yeah,
But it's cool. I mean, because it goes to show that well, even where I work at a mental health clinic, and all the staff, it's primarily female, and they are interested in like these big ideas and in helping others, especially those who are suffering. And I think that's amazing.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
I think the stereotype is that women are more interested in people and men in ideas, and I think Jordan Peterson is a good bridge for that because he is helping people. He's very practical, but he has ideas. And so I think that if when women see, oh wait, this is practical stuff, this is stuff that can help me with people, or that, then I think they're more intrigued by it. But it can be a little intimidating at first, I found. So
Sure. Something that's really interesting, I think, is that the subject of your blog dovetails perfectly with, um, traditional Christian values, and Latter-day Saint values, and and kind of since we're the Latter-day Lobsters, it's no surprise that we're Latter-day Saints. I hope that doesn't shock any of your readers.
it actually might.
Yeah, so
because I mean, I definitely so I'm a big C.S. Lewis fan, and so what's kind of interesting is I grew up in the Air Force. My dad was a chaplain, so he is a Protestant chaplain. So that means they don't have a separate category for LDS. So I grew up going to his sermons, which were non-denominational, and going to my church, the LDS church. And so I kind of got really a taste of both growing up. And I really just, even as I was being raised by my parents, I think we were really focused on kind of the mere Christianity, right? This, what we share in common. And so I'm sure almost no one knows my religion because I don't go there. I just stay with mere Christianity. Like everything. I mean, I have Muslim readers, I actually have atheist readers because I think, all these, just like Jordan Peterson, like it all applies to everyone. Like we all have the same motivations, but then it's at the depths of at the ends of some of these pieces, you have to tie it back into, God, or it doesn't really make sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was reading something interesting about, it just had to do with Christianity and Catholicism. It was a tweet that I saw. I posted it in the Lobster group, and it said something like, it was like some kid on Reddit, and he was saying like, "Hey, I'm interested in being baptized into the Catholic Church because it's based, and what was the term he used? The reactionary
God-pilled.
thing to do." Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'm being God pilled. Like, I want, basically, like in a nutshell, was saying, I want to become Catholic to own the libs. And I'm like, come on, man. But
Wrong.
yeah, exactly wrong.
I
But
don't
I
know if the
see,
libs will care.
yeah, it's like knock yourself out. But I see something really that happening where people are confusing sort of the political and the religious together, and they're doing the same thing, especially I believe with things like the Family Proclamation. It's kind of like a political, like a political rendezvous point where we can basically, these people online and can just like
I think we
and do
just get stuck in the weeds so much, right? Like
that's
it's all
valid, yeah.
just the weeds. It's like, I mean, I have a hard enough time with charity. Like I just don't spend a lot of time on these like these things on the tangents, because I mean, the core things are hard enough and we haven't gotten those down. And so we end up being distracted by all these issues that come up that, and I'm not saying some of these issues aren't important. I'm just saying it's like all we ever talk about anymore is, and everything is becoming political. And I really try and not make my writing not political. I try and like do philosophy, kind of what is under political, because I think that's what changes people rather than talking about political, because political is just made up, stuff anyway. Like
Well,
I
here's
just
an idea.
I don't like politics.
So I think one of the reasons why politics in general is so salient to people is because it gives them a sense of having like a broader sense of agency, right? I vote, and then society changes, and
It
it
gives
gives,
a community too.
yeah, exactly, it gives them a sense of meaning because of that sense of agency. But then when I read your blog, it's like, no, like your center of agency is in motherhood versus the political. So
Right.
what?
It's where you get your meaning, right? I mean, people get their meaning from, or their identity really is what it is. Like their sense of identity comes from their political party, or even if they're, whatever ism they put after, or ite, or whatever, they put after their name. And so, I mean, it's interesting to them. It fills their days with things to think about and be angry about. But I mean, how much better to be focused on your children? I just don't. I mean, obviously I get upset about political things, but I don't feel like that's a good thing, and I don't feel like I should live there. And so with my writing, there are times where it's like, okay, well, this has to be a little bit political because the philosophical is run into everything. Like I said, everything's political now. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
there was a Twitter account that was kind of like on the racist end of things, which is terrible.
yeah.
And it was called A Mother with a Purpose or something like that. And she was, I think, also a Latter-day Saint or like an ex-member or like a fundamentalist, something like that. I'm not entirely sure. So if anyone wants to correct me in the comments, they can. But her whole, her spiel was like, let's have it was ethnocentric, so that's really lame at the onset. But then it was like, I'm being a mother for political purposes, to own the libs, basically. And I'm like, no, like, this is not a game. This isn't like a freaking, how I feel like Donald Trump kind of turned politics into like a game, because it kind of is. But
Yeah.
it's like, it just bugs me so much. It's like, no, your children, being a mom, being a trad mom isn't like a political thing. Like, you should do it because you love your kids.
Right. I mean, I think so much of it, I mean, I don't know. Our world could be saved by one thing if we stopped caring what other people think. Right. Like, if we care what God thinks and not what other people think. And so much that you see now, I mean, especially on Twitter, that's all just caring what other people think. It drives their motivations, and it's not fulfilling. Like, you're gonna wake up every morning and feed your kids to own the libs. Like, no, that's not gonna bear out. Like, you're gonna be like, wait, I made a huge mistake if that's why you're doing it. So I mean, I think she's probably just saying that anyway. I don't think anyone could actually be motivated to have children for that reason, but maybe, I don't know. But I think people, it's all just about show and about, I just think people don't care that much about what I do. Like, why would I change my behavior to make someone upset when they're not thinking about me. You know what I mean? Like, we all tend to think that we're more important than we are. And I think that's certainly true now. And then there comes a time where we realize, oh, wait, no one's thinking about me. No one cares, and you need to build up a family around you that actually does, that actually is there. So when you get canceled on Twitter, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's interesting. You got to get off Twitter, Alejandro. You got to get off Twitter.
Yes, I do. My wife agrees.
Social media. I was gonna say, I think that's the problem with social media is, like you said, it just feeds into that whole caring what other people think. It really does. I've caught myself more than once. I haven't listened to it since a couple days ago, but I started listening to The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F as the edited version. But it literally has that same philosophy of, like, if you just learn what you actually want to give an F about or care about, then just screw everything else, kind of, like, you'll be happier if you do that, and I think it's true with parenting. Like, I could try and, like, listen to the devil on my shoulder and, like, trying to own this city council guy in Rexburg that I've been arguing with for some stupid reason. I don't know why I wanted to do that, but I did. Or, I can, like, think, wow, like, I have, like, these beautiful kids, and, I can spend time with them and cuddle them. Like, why would I ever choose this over that? But yet I do that, sometimes. And I'm just like, what the heck? Why am I doing this?
Yeah, it's hard. We got to just check in. Check in with ourselves. And sometimes maybe it is worth having these fights. But yeah, I totally agree, Anthony. It's just like, sometimes we drift off into an alternate reality where the value system is different than the one right before us. And so I think we got to, check out from it often.
What I appreciate about Peterson too is he kind of grounds us back in that, like, reality. He's like, hey, like, like, pay attention and, like, look at what's right in front of you, and find meaning, not what's expedient, what's meaningful, right?
Yeah.
No, yeah, I really like that. One of the things that Jordan Peterson also says is sometimes we're blinded by the things that are right in front of us, and of course, like, our phones are just a huge distraction. And you're right, I need to get off Twitter, like, really bad. It's interesting because Benjamin Pacini and I will be like, well, maybe we should try adding a positive voice to Twitter, but maybe it's not even worth it. Maybe you and Benjamin Bacchini can hash that one out for me. I'll just allocate that right
There
to you
is
two.
no way. It's
But-
way too far gone.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah.
saving it.
It's
But
Yeah.
but so as far as values are concerned, though, because that's a topic that really interests me. And one of the things that you brought up in your blog too is this idea of, and you brought this up at Lobster conference too. And it's popular, kind of this idea of self-care and like a neglectful mother who is kind of on her phone or is distracted by other things. And we see these types of people online, of course, and we know them, and maybe we are them, and that's fine. But where was I going? Something about values. I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so it seems to me like they're finding the value. It seems almost self-evident. Like, yeah, of course, my kids are the most important thing. But it also, like, our attention is drawn away by like the promise of grad school. Not that you shouldn't go, but like your kids are number one if you have them.
Yeah.
You know what? And okay, so I was having a discussion in Sunday school a few years ago, and I was in YSA ward, and I promise I'll tie this into values. But we were talking about the family proclamation, and about motherhood and about parenthood, and someone made a comment, and they said something, being a mother is the greatest thing you can aspire to. And I think they were trying to quote a general authority or something like that. And I mean, I believe that's true. But the way it kind of came across was something like, no, like, abandon your career, abandon your education, abandon your well-being so that you can become a mother. And that's not, I mean, it sounds intuitively wrong on multiple levels. And people sort of frame it that way when I hear people talk about it, both in the church and outside of the church, that like, and you brought this up in your blog too, that it's like, it's a sacrifice, and that's true to an extent, but also it's like, maybe I personally think we don't talk about values enough in our society. Like when I thought about values, the first time I really thought about that is actually when I started listening to Dr. Peterson, but then also when I went to therapy myself, because the way I was sort of taught what values meant was like the principles by which you live your life, which is true, but also values are the way I see values now is like values are the things that you're willing to invest your time, money, effort, and love into. And so if you have to weigh two things, it's like, which one do you value more?
Yeah.
Do you value? And so the way I see it anyway, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, because one, I don't have kids. I have 2 dogs. And I'm a newlywed. So like, what do I know? But
well, sometimes people outside of it can see things that people inside can't see, actually.
That's true.
So you should, but
well,
yeah.
Anyway, so instead of framing it as like, oh, this is just a big sacrifice, maybe framing it like, well, what do you value? Like if you have your career and you're going to clock into work on Monday, but then you have a kid the next day, like which one takes priority now? And it's like, which one are you more invested in? What do you plan on investing yourself into? And
I think there's kind of like, we do frame it this way, like it's motherhood or it's you find self-fulfillment. And it's like, really? Like, can't you do both? Like history, like the whole course of human history, women have had babies. Okay. And not every mother who has had babies has ruined her life and not been able to fulfill herself. We need to start like being able to bring it together again, where it's like I wrote a piece on this. It's like, if you love baking, if that's where you find your fulfillment, rather than going off and to an empty kitchen, bring your kids in and do it with them. And I think because if you do decide to have kids, you don't want to be resenting them from taking you away from, what fulfills you. And so we got to find a way to incorporate parenting with what fulfills us. Now, like in the stage Anthony's in, there's just a lot of like, I'm sorry, there's just a lot of sheer sacrifice, meaning you're not getting to do almost anything that you want to do.
Yeah.
And you just have to say, okay, I'm just going to be patient for like the first 5 years. I'm just going to be patient and say, and I think there's a lot of impatience with women where it's like, I gotta get my career. It's like, life is pretty long. Like you can be a little older and you can do this stuff. But when you have a baby, you do kind of for those first few years, you need to put that to the side a little bit. Now, that's for each woman to decide what the side looks like. I don't go around judging what women are doing. That's different for everyone, but she just needs to keep in the back of her head the good of the child, because that does have to come first. Now, that's the deal you make when you become a mother. And fortunately, children don't need as much time as we think, like, especially once they're 5. Like, we don't have to be sitting on the floor playing with them. I mean, this is the problem that I see with kind of the mother culture, that we think the perfect mother is sitting down on the floor playing all the time with their children. That is ridiculous. Do you know how many millions of years, well, we'll say thousands of years, women have not been playing all day with their children? Like, you should.
Yeah.
You should
have
sit.
like books like, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. There's so many different expectations.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to be a good parent, you have to do X, Y, Z. And it's like, kids are pretty good and just kind of let them do their own thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, it's good to like have variety and juggle and be involved, but like, it's not the same, like you said, as like, I got to be like constantly hovering over them, because that can be, detrimental. And I don't know, just there's so much noise, and it's like, how do you cut through and like trust, I guess
trust your instincts. I really think that's true, Anthony. Like, I try and play with my kids. I think that's important to do, but I just think we don't have a good balance. I think that it's like people either think, and so they get burned out because they're doing too many things that aren't really even necessary. And then they let go of things that actually are really important to do with your kids, And so I just think there's so many, like, we're trying to be like this person or this person, and we end up kind of messing it up, where if we were just like, use their common sense and what am I interested in? What can I share with my child? Then it's not as miserable. But like, going back to what you were saying about motherhood is a woman's highest calling. It's like, I just don't think we limit God that way. And we say, okay, for women, all of us, our highest calling is being a mother. I think that the vast majority of women will be highly fulfilled and be great mothers, and they should seek for that, because that will make so much meaning. But I mean, Mother Teresa, did she not fulfill God's plan for her? Of course she did. Like, there are other paths. And if a woman cannot have children, do you know how much good she can do in the world? Like, and so I don't if she maintains her feminine maternal ways, and not in the devouring mother way. But it's interesting, because my husband told me about the secretary he has at his work. I think she's left now, but every single morning, like, he would come in and she would greet him, and she did this trivia game, and she made this workplace like the funnest place to be. Everyone was excited to go to work, right? And it was because she had like this mother heart that you hear about. Like, she was bringing that with her and making the world a better place through it. And so when women are like, I'm not going to be a mother, I'm going to be a corporate lawyer, I'm going to be a man, it's like, that's not fulfilling. Be a lawyer, but you don't have to be, this tough as nails. Like, just use your gifts and your talents where God takes you. It doesn't have to be with children. You might not have that opportunity. I don't like my blog. I'm like, I don't want to, I'm not trying to force people to have babies. I do think more women should probably want to have babies, but they shouldn't have babies if they don't want to. They should try and increase their desire if that's what, God wants for them. And what, most people are going to want to have a family. Like, when they're older, they're going to want to have children around them. And I think Jordan Peterson's right about that. But if you can't, then you can still have a wonderful life and do so much. Like, there are many things I won't be able to do. Like, I didn't get my grad degree because I had babies. And so there are things that I won't be able to do. And for me, I feel like that's fine. So I don't know. I'm going on too much, but I just think that it's the comparison issue that we get to, that it's always a problem, right?
I think it's true. I mean, I just think of like, from what I remember, like the woman who created the Apgar, right, for like kids. I know that from her like whole story, like she had to really fight tooth and nail because it's kind of like a man's world, right? And I don't know that she ever had kids of her own, but she's literally saved like probably millions of children's lives, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like you don't have to have kids to, like you said, like have that maternal influence, you know, kind of channel that I guess a
Right.
heavenly mother, right? Kind of
Mhm.
into people's lives. And so I
Yep.
appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's very true. There's a lot of different callings that God has for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of it, like in Catholicism, for example, I know nuns often get a bad rap, but there is a place that women who don't have children can find great meaning and not feel like, they're not doing God's work. And I think, there's so many, I learn a lot about like Catholic saints and things, and I'm just fascinated by the place that women hold in the Catholic Church, because I think it's awesome. And I mean, obviously there's also the other side, there's bad aspects, that have gone on, but I think it's something we could emulate, maybe the good parts.
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, from my perspective, it's like, if you don't want to have kids, don't have them, because the people who want to have kids are going to do better at raising them. Why force anyone to have kids?
Well,
They
you
probably won't
definitely
be as
shouldn't
good.
force someone, but
Of
if
course.
if a woman, like for example, like if you asked me when I was 16 if I want to have kids, I would have said, I mean, I probably would have said yes, but I didn't actually want to. Like, I didn't like kids. I wasn't maternal.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that we have to be a little bit careful about writing off children, because we have this idea of what a mother is like, and we're not like that. And I see that a lot with young women now, where it's like, well, I'm just not very maternal. I'm not into baking. I'm not into any of that. Like any of the like mothery things, I'm not into. And not that I'm the world's best mother, but I'm just saying, like, I think we get, because we have kind of this label of what a mother looks like, so many women are like, well, that's just not for me. It's like, well, the vision of mother that you have is not for you, but that doesn't mean motherhood isn't for you.
So much more expensive than that, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like I said, it's not like, I don't think anyone should like have a kid if they don't want to. I think they should look at maybe if they might actually want to, right? Like, just think about that deeply. If maybe there is a part of them that would want to, and not just kind of write it off.
Awesome.
Yeah, my wife says she loves her babies. She's not too much a fan of babies as a species, she says, but hers, yeah. And
yes, it's so much different with your own kids, isn't it, Anthony?
Yeah, don't put us in nursery. We're good.
Man,
Especially
I am in
now.
nursery right now. So I'm in nursery right now.
That's because they're training you. They're training you because they think you're due for one.
Yeah, it's
the young newly married couples, yeah, in the wards.
So here's what's interesting about this calling is one, when I first met my bishop, we kind of got off on the wrong foot, let's say, and he said some things that I thought were pretty rude to us. And I think you're on mute, Anthony. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. I was just talking to my wife. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. But my wife, she went to BYU. She was going into education, and then she ended up graduating in family studies, and so she's great. But she's been teaching. She's been teaching in public schools for like years, almost 10 years now, because she got like a head start. And so she is super comfortable with teaching kids, especially younger kids, and she wants to teach preschool one day. But she wants to like make that like her career. That's kind of what she's leaning towards because she loves it. Anyway, with my bishop, we kind of got off on the wrong foot, and then we had given a few talks at sacrament meeting, and I always try to make my talks like as engaging as possible, and I try to stretch people's minds because that's what I like. And I think church can be a meaningful experience if like you actually like got people thinking and engaged with like the gospel. Anyway, so I personally was hoping to get like a calling in Sunday school or in the young men's or something. I mean, I would love to just teach Sunday school. But my bishop called us to be a nursery, and I'm like, freaking my bishop, like, of course, because we're the newlyweds, and you know, we don't have kids, like whatever. And I was kind of like all like bitter about it. But my wife was like, stop it. Like you're raining on my parade because I love kids and I am like educated to teach children and I can be with them and I want a baby one day. I'm like, I know we're gonna have kids one day. He's like, so stop taking this away from me. Like this is awesome. I want to be a nursery. And I tried to like use my talents to engage with these kids, you know, these toddlers. So I play my guitar for them. My bishop he let me play my guitar. We play nursery songs. And it's really fun. And it's really fun to like hang out with these kids and because we have two dogs, when we walk them, all the kids are like, "Oh, we want to pet your dog." And so
Yeah.
we've gotten to know our neighbors and other like the kids in the neighborhood just because they like love our dogs and because we're a nursery. So I think I don't know, like I said, if I'm going to make my Sunday school talk or my Sunday school lesson amazing and engaging, like I'm gonna do the same thing with kids in
Yeah.
nursery.
Anything that you do, you gotta just do the best you can, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's never too young to start them on Jordan Peterson. No, I mean,
you know what? My wife, you'll have to talk to her. I'm really curious. You'll like my wife. You'll have to meet her, but she hates Jordan Peterson. So it's kind of funny.
Really?
Yeah. So maybe next time you're in our part of town, we'll all
It's
go out.
probably because you're so obsessed with him and she
Yeah,
sees
that's
him as a
partly.
threat.
Well, you know what though? Here's an interesting topic. So we all read 12 Rules for Life. And then there was chapter 5. And
Remind me.
Jordan Peterson even said you know, I'm surprised this was not my most controversial chapter, but it was the chapter that said, don't force your kids to do anything. Or what
Right.
does it say? Don't
allow your kids to do
We were
anything that
just
makes you
talking about
hate
that
them.
on the car ride home as our toddler was screaming. Yeah.
Well, that's my wife's biggest
I
hangout
think
with
about
Jordan
that. I think
Peterson.
about
You
that
have
a
no
lot.
power over that toddler yet.
So yeah, don't let your kids do things that make you good.
Yeah, that was an interesting chapter. What did she think of that, Alejandro?
So from what I remember, she thought it was she said something like, it sounds like he hates children. And I'm like, well, I
Yeah.
mean, that's probably why he's
I
telling
think he
people
calls
not to
them
hate.
little monsters or
Yeah, he
something.
calls them little monsters, yeah.
But
I think
then
he's
he
just not
also
afraid to be a
speaks
little
really
honest
nice.
and-
What?
Yeah. I can see how it comes off as like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, because when I first heard that, like, I'm like, don't let them do like, I'm like, what? So they can't like, you know, resist authority, things like that. But then as I like thought about it, I'm like, he's basically saying like, help them like be socialized. He's not saying like
Yeah.
they can never question things, like, you know. So you kind of have to like read a little deeper into it. But I think
Yeah.
that's the thing with statements; it doesn't always cover everything very well. You have to really like dig into what he's saying.
Yeah,
Well-
exactly. I mean, you can't say everything all the time. And I found that even in my writing, people will be like, well, what about this? I'm like, well, I only have like 8 minutes of attention span. So you can't put everything in there. But he did get a truth in that I think is true, but it does come across pretty darn harsh to a lot of women. Or it's like,
Yeah,
but-
well, I mean, a lot of even in our group, in our Lobster group, a lot of people didn't like chapter 5, and I think that's valid. I'll have to reread it to really. I should have read it, but or reread it for this podcast. But I know,
there
for
were
example,
parts I didn't like either.
yeah. Well, I know. Well, there's one thing to consider too is Jordan Peterson has depression, and so I think part of his cynicism, because that's kind of the approach he takes, is he takes a very cynical approach to a lot of the problems. He does it, I think, in an attempt to steel man his problems, but also he's just like depressed and cynical. And
Yeah.
I would
so
say he's kind of got a depressed tint to a lot of his writing, which I understand if
Yeah.
he's dealing with that, you know.
Yeah.
So that probably
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole life is suffering thing. It's like, I mean, it can be, but
Yeah.
I don't think you should say it is. You could say life can be and it will be, but it is like a continuous, like it always is. It just, I mean, and he brings hope into it, but I think you're right. He kind of has a depressive view of life.
yeah.
maybe that's why I don't like him, because I love Russian literature and it's basically the same depressing tone.
Do
Yeah,
you,
that's why he
Anthony?
loves Russian
I love Russian literature. That's actually what got me into Jordan Peterson, because I was looking for Dostoevsky's thing and his video came up.
Just got a lot of
It's-
ennui, I guess.
Very dark, isn't it?
Okay. So I was talking to Terrell Gibbons 2 nights ago. Yeah. And
Name drop.
yeah, boom. Anyway, this other gentleman brought up Jordan Peterson at an event where Terrell was speaking, and so we kind of all got to talk about Jordan Peterson for a little bit. It was kind of
Oh, that's
funny.
cool. Yeah.
But I said, because he runs Faith Matters and they do the podcast, the Faith Matters podcast. I said, Terrell, you should get Jordan Peterson on your podcast. But he literally like said 20 minutes ago in that meeting, he's like, the church hates like celebrity Mormons. They have an aversion to superstar status because they feel they have to like the attention has to like you have to compete for attention and you don't want to compete against the brethren.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so like a Mormon Jordan Peterson is probably not gonna fly as well.
No,
Anyway,
it's not. And that's actually why I would never mention anything in my writing. Well, one of the reasons is
yeah,
we have spokesmen for the church, and
right.
I mean, and my views might not line up, or it's just I'm just staying where in the center.
Sure.
Like, I just don't think it's. But I mean, that's not to say there aren't people who can do that, but I just don't. But yeah.
Well, I told Terrell, I'm like, you should do it because Terrell has said repeatedly his favorite author is Dostoevsky. And I'm like, you and Peterson can bond over Dostoevsky. But it is, but yeah, Russian literature is very dark. And I mean, Russia's history is just dark.
Oh, I don't think there's a country that's had a worse history than Russia. You served there, right, Anthony? Yeah.
Really?
I've had friends that served there. I've never served there myself, but I did start learning the language and know a little bit about the culture. And
okay.
Read
yeah.
literature.
I think it's fascinating because of kind of just the default position is an atheistic one. And I think that's kind of nice because then as you read, you see the argument for Christianity coming from just there's no God. And so for me, I kind of like that. It helped me with, build kind of my foundation to say what the absence of God actually looks like in the real world, because they have lived that in Russia. And it wasn't just under communism. Even before communism, atheism was big. It's been around. So, yeah.
The thing with the brothers Karamazov, where that's basically the argument, kind of for and against, and Dostoevsky just seems to really tap into that well and understand the kind of conflicts that are going on there, and that's what I think is cool about Russia. Sorry to go on a Russia tangent, but as dark as they've been through like so many things, I think it created a really fascinating Christianity for them. You know what I mean? In terms of like how they think about faith and God is in that suffering Messiah sense it just resonates with me.
Yeah, it is so fascinating. You should read my brother's book. He wrote a book on Russian religions. But anyway,
so cool.
But yeah, I mean, I think, and like things like this, I actually think it's important for mothers to know about these to read some Dostoevsky because kids are just growing up with kind of a shallow faith sometimes, because they're just raised in it and they're not seeing it from the outside perspective. And so really being serious about philosophy with our kids in these days is really important, I think, because they're gonna face a lot when they're out there in the world, a lot of just negative, nihilistic, subjectivist ideas, and it's important to get them grounded. So I think reading good literature, listening to people like Peterson is important. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna convert my wife to the Petersonian boat one day, but
well, you just start her small. I mean, my husband likes him, but he doesn't. He's not as into him as me. Like you're not gonna have two that are equally enthusiastic, and that's probably a good thing.
That's probably a good thing. Yeah. That's cool. Well, we got to wrap up pretty soon, but thank you so much, Allie, for coming. I think this has been like an amazing conversation. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
No, I really liked it.
Any last words for people who are thinking about being parents or becoming a mother, or what encouraging words would you give someone who is kind of, I mean, everyone is hesitant about having a baby. It's like no one just is like, yeah, I'm ready. But
Yeah.
well,
It,
any last words?
oh, I don't know. I mean, that's, I think it's just be prepared that it's going to be really hard. And I mean, it's going to be a lot of sleepless nights but that you need to just have kind of a long-term view of what you're doing and really believe in your mission, because when you're having kids, like what you're actually doing, the miracle that you're participating in. I mean, just when you think about you're creating a human life, and that person can be the one who changes the world, and you can be the one who changes the world. I mean, Plato said, even though I don't know, I can't find the actual link to this because it doesn't actually sound like something Plato would say, but he said, give me a new set of mothers and I'll give you a new world. Which doesn't go in line with his philosopher kings thing, but anyway, but I like the quote anyway. So it's just I think if women go into it really understanding how powerful what they're doing is, and I sent you that, you are asking my most popular philosophy of motherhood post, and one has just taken off, like, and it's weird because it'll be like a couple months and then all of a sudden it will be going crazy. It's like people read this one and it's I didn't even write it, I just took it, my dad shared it in one of his sermons, and it's just talking about how babies change the world, and it's really well written. Just talks about how, you know, in the 1800s everyone was like thinking about wars and Napoleon, but really who was being born during those times, and who are these men and women who are being born, and those babies are the ones who actually were way more important than these wars that keep happening and they're never going to stop. And so and I kind of feel like that way about politics too, right? It's kind of like these things seem so important, but it's the babies that are being born that are actually important. They're the ones that, and so I guess that's what I would say. It's just think about, you know, the long-term view of it instead of the short term, which is what we tend to focus on these days, short-term output. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think
so
I love
much.
that babies really place everything in perspective in our like world and our life. I'm gonna have to dwell on that because that feels very true to me.
I'll send you this quote, Anthony, because
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to say that I'm really, I don't know how to say this that doesn't sound patronizing. I'm proud of you, but you're doing a hard work right now. And this is not, I mean, twins and a toddler. I mean, that is superhuman kind of stuff. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I really hope that, and I know that God is
wise.
with you, and just know that, you know, your efforts are doubled by him, because don't strive for perfection. Just do what you can, because this is a really hard task you've been given. And obviously God thinks that you can handle it, but I don't envy you, even though those babies are cute.
Oh yeah, my wife would say, yeah, don't envy us, but no, thank you, I appreciate that. And again, I have to give all of that and just times 10 to my wife because she's here with them majority of the time, honestly. So but I do appreciate it, and I'll relay that to her. So no, it's easy as a parent to kind of beat yourself up and be like, don't worry so much about it, you know.
Yeah, those kids are lucky to have you.
I'm lucky to have that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ali. This was awesome. Let's do this again soon. And you know, if you guys haven't liked and subscribed, please do so now. I should have said that at the beginning of the podcast, but it's okay. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.